Hello, movie lovers. This is Does It Hold Up? And I'm Adam. And over the last couple of weeks, I haven't been putting out a box office episode where every Tuesday I'd break down the box office because just was a lot of work and people weren't really watching it. I wasn't enjoying myself anymore. So I'm changing things up a little bit. There was something I used to do as part of the box office that I really liked doing and I wanted to get back to it, and that was breaking down movies from the past about how well they did in theaters. So we're going to go back to that and start breaking movies down, but we're going to talk a little more about the movies themselves as well. Rather than just looking at the numbers, we're just going to kind of take a look at the movie. So this is the first episode in that new series that will be coming out every single Tuesday, and I wanted to take a look at one movie in particular that I feel like is a really bad movie, but it's kind of also good. I won't agree that it's a good movie, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as everybody remembers. And that's 2011's Green Lantern, starring Ryan Reynolds. Yes, that DC movie. Superman's coming out later this year. Marvel's kind of bottoming out lately with a lot of their movies, but let's go back and take a look at one of the first awful, bad, maybe good superhero movies. Green Lantern went to theaters on June 17th, 2011. At that time, Christian Bale was still Batman, the Avengers had yet to assemble, and DC was banking on the star power of Ryan Reynolds to get a new franchise going. Oh, how wrong they were. Reynolds was only interested in doing this superhero movie because he was trying to show that he could lead a superhero franchise. He was desperately trying to get a Deadpool movie made after the disaster that was X-Men Origins Wolverine just 2 years earlier. Despite this, everything on paper for Green Lantern actually seemed solid. A movie star in Ryan Reynolds that was somehow still on the rise. A well-known female lead with Blake Lively catching fire during a beloved TV show, and a supporting cast that would make any other movie jealous, with the likes of Peter Sarsgaard, Mark Strong, Tim Robbins, Angela Bassett. The director, Martin Campbell, was also a hot property at the time, having just directed movies like 2010's Edge of Darkness starring Mel Gibson and 2006's Casino Royale, which some consider the best Daniel Craig Bond movie. This should have been an easy victory for DC and Warner Brothers, but mistakes early on led to the movie's downfall. In the movie, Hal Jordan, played by Ryan Reynolds, is chosen to be a new member of the Green Lantern Corps, after a dying alien named Abin Sur sends his power ring to find the next successor. Hal must learn how to harness the power of will, with help from his mentor Sinestro, an over-the-top but endearing Mark Strong. Then he must overcome his fear to do battle with Hector Hammond, played brilliantly by Peter Sarsgaard, after he's been corrupted by Parallax. So what went wrong? Well, first, the movie became a clunky exposition piece that failed to really articulate what was happening in the story despite long-winded scenes explicitly telling the audience what was happening. Secondly, the studio decided it needed to interfere in every aspect. They watched over Campbell's shoulders the entire time and wanted complete creative control. Campbell wanted Bradley Cooper for the lead, but the studio hired Reynolds behind his back. The studio constantly clashed with the director over the story and even clashed with the heads of DC at the time. Thirdly, Hal was an unlikable character from start to finish. His bravado came across as arrogant and unwarranted, which never endears us to the character. He is passive in his own story, as when the time for adventure calls, he just lets it go to voicemail because he has better things to do. But no, he doesn't. By the end of the movie, the hero never has to battle fear, because we never see him actually be afraid of anything, but then he still tries to give up. It's just a clunky way for a character to begin, and he's just not a hero that we can get behind. And lastly, the thing everyone hated the most, the CGI. It was atrocious from beginning to end, and the studio themselves did no favors by forcing everything to be CGI, including the supersuit.
And please don't make the supersuit green. Or animated.
But it wasn't all bad. A few things went right as well. Mark Strong was a huge highlight of the movie, and he definitely deserves another chance as the character of Sinestro, because he stole every scene he was in. Peter Sarsgaard as Hector Hammond also hams it up in some of the best ways possible, that he makes even the most mundane scenes somewhat entertaining. When everything was all said and done, was this movie a good investment for the studio? A planned sequel was cancelled, which doesn't say much for how the film was received. But let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers. So that's a little about why I think the Green Lantern didn't succeed, or a lot of people kind of overlooked it. But let's go to the numbers now and really break down how much they spent on this movie, how much it brought in from the theaters, and then I also did a little more research into what the home video rentals and sales look like, and maybe the streaming rights as well. Let's go ahead and break those down. Green Lantern had a production budget of $200 million. They spent another $120 million on marketing. Some places actually think it was closer to $175 million on marketing, about $100 million in the domestic US and Canada, but $75 million overseas. I always like to be safe and just say 60% of the production budget was spent on marketing. The movie would go on to gross $282.5 million, which is already less than the spend. But let's break it down a little bit farther. Here's the domestic numbers for Green Lantern. In week 1, it made just under $71 million. $70,961,421 to be exact. The studio gets to keep around 60% of that, so they netted $42.5 million from the first week. Moving into week 2, the movie had a tremendous drop, dropping to just below $25 million only. The studio got to keep 55% of that money, which means they netted about $13.6 million. Week 3 plus, this movie had no legs whatsoever at the theater. It made just about $20.9 million in the rest of its theatrical run. Studio only got to keep about 50% of that, so $10.5 million. But that wasn't the only places that the movie played, because the movie also played overseas. Internationally, the movie brought in $103 million. The studio, though, because of a bunch of rights issues overseas with a lot of that, only gets to keep 40% of international gross. So they brought in $41.1 million. And then in China, which these numbers are extremely hard to find, this was the closest number I could actually get to what I believe the movie actually made in China, was $63 million during its run. Studio, on the other hand, only gets to keep 22.5% of that, mostly because they have a lot of deals to work out over there, which netted them $14.1 million. So overall, Green Lantern grossed that $282.5 million. The cost was $320 million for the budget and marketing. After all the theaters and distributors and all those people took their cut, the studio netted just $122 million. The estimated loss for Green Lantern during its theatrical run was $198 million. That's crazy, but that's just the theatrical market. There's other ways that movies can make up that lack of funding while it played in theaters, and some of those ways are home video. Green Lantern came out in 2011 when people were still renting movies, people were still buying movies, physical media, and so the estimated sales for Green Lantern after it came out in 2011 and until they stopped tracking the numbers for it, so it might be slightly higher than this, is around $46.1 million. That's how much it brought in from home market. But the studio doesn't get to keep all of that. They get to keep a large portion of it, but not all of it. So when everything was said and done, the net that they made from home videos was around $27.6 million. Still not a lot of money. You add that to the $198 million it had lost, get you down to about $172 million lost on this movie. Things aren't looking very good. Then if you go to streaming, Green Lantern went to streaming first at Netflix, like most movies did back then. Obviously, it didn't happen in 2011. It didn't happen until Netflix really got into the streaming market many years later. But Netflix still had to pay for this movie, and because they were trying to really build a catalog at that point, they spent more money than they probably should have. By all estimates, they spent around $20 million to acquire the rights to stream Green Lantern on their service, which is way too much money, but Netflix early on was throwing around money like they were never going to run out of it, which is why that business has a bunch of issues in its own, which may be a video in a series later. Right now, we're going to be talking about Green Lantern. So we take that $20 million away, $150 million this movie lost. Now, there are other markets that I cannot find numbers for, like the toy market or any combination of things where they were promoted by Burger King or McDonald's or anything that money was coming in through those streams. I can't find any of that. But let's just assume that they did all right there. Maybe $50 million, 50 to 75 million. That means Green Lantern, in its entirety, lost anywhere from 75 million to $100 million. Which is kind of crazy. Because at the end of the day, Green Lantern may not be a great movie. Hell, it might not even be a good movie. But it's not that bad of a movie. In fact, even the star Ryan Reynolds went back and watched it for the first time years later and tweeted his entire experience while doing so and agreed. Maybe it's not as bad as people remember. So there it is. That's a breakdown of Green Lantern from 2011, all of its box office numbers, how much money it made or lost during its run, and just a little bit more about what I thought about the movie. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Did you hate Green Lantern when it came out? Have you given it a second chance? Might be time to do so. And until I see you again, just remember to be good to yourself, kind to others, and keep watching movies.